Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about Ascended Gear, how to acquire it in World vs. World, what characters are best really to do as your first character being fully ascended in World vs. World, which ones you really should avoid until later on, until you have multiple sets of gear, and just kind of an expectation of how long it's going to take you to get these characters ascended. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on to which characters you really should deal. So first we'll start with the medium class. This is the armor set that I would probably least recommend building right now. Just because if you look at the three classes for medium right now, Ranger is definitely the most hated class in World versus World for group compositions. People just don't like having them there. There might be some edge cases where um, somebody will be looking for like a druid or a different ranger class to be playing inside a group composition, but it's extremely rare. So really, you're not going to get a whole lot of value out of playing ranger right now. I would say, as far as engineer, it's definitely your strongest medium class right now. There's a large ability for them to be doing condi clears right now. Smoke fields are also really important in group composition, and their sustain is really good. So I would say engineer is definitely the strongest candidate for that, but you're not putting an engineer in every party in most group compositions. So I would say while medium is pretty good with engineer, I would probably lean a little more towards the lighter, the heavy armors, just because there's two really strong classes in both of those groups. In light, you can make a strong argument for both the Elementalist right now and the Scourge being readily used in most group compositions in some form or another, whether it be in Reaper, if they're still running power damage, or with Scourge for the Necromancers if you're running a Condi, which is probably the more common thing that you're going to see right now. And then Elementalists are very good at clearing conditions as well as still doing some pretty solid damage and providing barriers. And then for the heavies, you're definitely going to see a lot of use from the Guardian, which has really never ever fell out of a meta during the entire time World versus World has been live in Guild Wars 2, as well as the Warrior, who is pretty much right there as far as never really falling out of meta. Whether it was Hammerstone Warriors way back at the beginning, or whether it was Berserker damage after HOT, or whether it's been the Spellbreakers and either their damage version or just their strip support version in World versus World. Both of those classes have been really, really strong and really heavily used in group compositions. So my recommendation for your first set of armor is definitely to build a heavy set or a light set. That's going to kind of depend on your playstyle and the needs of the group that you're playing with. Kind of talk to, if you're playing in a group, talk to the commander
Mine.
and
All
look at your
mine.
guild resources and really see where their need is. That way, you're not building a set of armor in vain, because as we're going to get into here, it's going to take you a while to do this, and you're going to want to be able to use the gear when you're done. So let's go ahead and take a look at the World versus World version stuff here. I'm going to talk about that first. I'm only going to talk about getting it to Ascended really today. I will talk about the getting it to legendary potentially in a different video if you guys want to talk about that. But let's go ahead and just talk about getting ascended gear on a character first, because it's definitely the shorter time constrained version of getting gear, as well as it's just going to take a lot less resources to accomplish. So if we look at the ascended gear here, you're going to notice that there are three major currencies that you're going to need outside of gold, being the skirmish tickets, the Grandmaster Marks, and then it'll be tailor, leatherworking, and armor smithing marks, and the memories of battle. So the only thing that you can purchase on the trading post out of these currencies are the memories of battle. They are not super cheap. So if you don't have a lot of gold, it's probably going to take you a little bit of time to build those up. The most important time gated item inside this are the World v World Skirmish tickets, and they take quite a while to build up. You can only get 365 of them in a week if you max out your pips on your World versus World tracks. So if you come through and you do all of your pips and you get all the way through and max these out, you're only going to get 365 of them. So with that being said, if your goal is to complete a complete set of Ascended armor in World versus World, because you want the shiny armor that has the tentacles and everything on it, it's going to take you quite a while to do that. But to get the base set, not the Mistforged set, it's going to take you about 3.5 to 4 weeks. It'll take you 3.6 weeks, so you'll have to get onto your 4th week of maxing out your World versus World pips for those weeks to be able to purchase an entire set of armor, and that's only for the skirmish tickets. As far as the Grandmaster Marks, I'm going to recommend that everyone goes through and they max out. If you're doing heavy armor, go ahead and max out your crafting for armor smithing, and then probably also for weapon smithing as well, because that's where most of your weapons are going to be coming from. And then what you're going to want to do is take the daily crafting ectoplasms, so the wood, the mithril, and the leather, and you're going to want to take and you're going to want to craft those daily, because you're going to need them to convert to make the Grandmaster Marks. And the reason, so if you go ahead and do this without crafting, it's going to take you, since you're only getting 3 of these Grandmaster Mark shards a week, and it's going to take you basically 3 1/3 weeks. So basically every 4 weeks you're going to be able to make one of these Grandmaster Mark boxes. So it's going to take you 60 weeks to get everything that you need to complete a set of armor if you're not using crafting. So please, please, please go ahead, max out your crafting for whether it's your heavy set or whether it's for your light set or whether it's for your medium set. Go ahead and max that out. Make sure you're doing your daily crafting to make your Grandmaster Marks, because it's definitely going to be cheaper that way. And then on top of that, it's also going to help you get to your gear faster. So if you're doing your crafting and you're able to max out your pips within 4 weeks, so 3.5 weeks, you will be able to get an entire set of Ascended World versus World armor, the first tier. We're not going to really talk about Mistforged armor because it takes you all the way up to rank 2000 to be able to unlock the super shiny back piece, or the chest piece that I have here with your glowing tentacles. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the other pieces of the Ascended gear. We're going to talk about the equipment, so the earrings, the rings, the amulet, and the back piece. So if you want to go through and make the back piece for Warbringer, if you come over here to get to the Ascended version of this, it is going to take you an astronomically long amount of time to do this. You're going to need, see, I haven't even done this yet because of all of the tickets that it takes. So it takes you 350 tickets for the first one. It takes you 525 tickets for the second one. It takes you 700 tickets for the third one and 875 tickets for the fourth one. And what this will do is this will get you the Ascended version of this when you combine all of them in the Mystic Forge. So if you take all of the time to do that, it's going to cost you a grand total of 2,450 World versus World skirmish tickets, or about 7 weeks of World versus World progression at maxing out your World versus World track every one of those weeks. So that's definitely the worst conversion out of all of the gear here in World versus World. Please, please, please do not, on your first set of Ascended gear for a character, do not make Warbringer. It's just not worth it right now. Definitely go for it later when you're ready for it, but definitely not a good use of resources at the beginning. You can get them from other places, which we'll talk about here shortly. And then also the Ascended weapons are here. Also, really not a great use of resources, but I'll at least mention how to get them. So you'll be able to, if you go through the Ascended weapons are here, you have to go through on your reward tracks, and then you have to do the hero weapon reward chest. And then once you do this for, say, a greatsword and unlock the greatsword from this box, then the weapon will unlock over here. And if you do it for just a sword, or so you'll have to go through, if you want to get all of these, you'll have to do it for every single weapon. Then the other one is to get the armor, you're also going to have to run the armor track. So the Triumphant Armor reward track, you're going to have to run this. So at a minimum, you're going to have to run this 6 times to get a full set of gear, or if you want to unlock all of the Ascended pieces, you'll want to run that a total of 18 times. So let's go ahead and talk about so if you were to do the weapons and run the reward tracks, generally you'll be able to get 1 weapon per week. It comes out to 0.96 of your weekly pips that you're going to need to complete 1 weapon. So if you need 2 sets of dual or one-handed weapons, it's going to take you 3.84 weeks to complete that. So it's going to take you longer to build out your weapons than it is going to build out your armor set. And then also, respectively, if you were going to look at it to do there are the trinkets here. They are available there. It's really not a great use of the skirmish tickets, in my opinion. Definitely not off of the initial onset. It is kind of nice that you can reset them here with the mist capacity, but there's also another set of trinkets that you can do that with, and those ones are going to be from Bloodstone Finn, which is one of the places we'll talk about now, and why it is so much better to go to Bloodstone Finn to get those initial pieces of gear. So let's go ahead and head over to Bloodstone Finn. It is part of Living Season 3 if you don't have that. There are some alternate things that you can do to get gear that's not going to be from the Living Season 3 maps, but we'll get into those in a little bit. I would start with Bloodstone Finn here, just because it is definitely a staple as to where I'm getting my gear from, and a lot of players still have access to it. So if we go here in Bloodstone Finn and we drop down on this side here and we fall all the way down to the ground level, there is a vendor that has some different items as opposed to the one just directly on the airship, and she's going to have some really the most important thing, since we talked about the cost of Warbringer, is she has a backpack here for 200 bloodstones and 500 of the unbound magic, or sorry, 5,000 of the unbound magic. So you can get 50 of these a day, which is the cap for your account. In addition to, you can also run the World versus World track. This is the one I'm generally running at a regular basis in World versus World after completing the other things that I need, because that reward track will also give you 50. So if you're running that reward track and every 8 hours an average player without any boosts can complete a reward track in 8 hours. If it's taking you the average amount of time to complete your pips, which is generally going to be about 24 hours per week to max out your reward track, you're going to be able to get through that 3 times. So you're going to get 150 of these from World versus World if you're running that reward track, which leaves you with another 50 that you'd have to do. So if you came out here in 1 day plus your reward track, you would be able to complete that. And if you came out for another 2 days, you would be able to get your ring. And then another 3 days, you would be able to get your pendant. Alright, so here we are at Sandswept Isles. Between Sandswept Isles and Dragonfall, you can get both the sets of rings and earrings, as well as the amulet. You'll still need a backpack, so you're going to need 3 maps, whether you're using Living Season 4 or Living Season 3 maps. If you're running Living Season 3, you're able to run the completion off of Bloodstone Finn, Ember Bay, and Bitterfrost. Definitely do the ones from Bloodstone Finn, just because they're stat swappable. And then the other ones that are going to be pretty quick and readily available is going to be from Bitterfrost, because there is no map currency cap there. You can get all of the currency you need in a single day if you were to farm it hard enough, whereas the other maps are limited to 50 per day. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the weapons side of the Ascended loadout. So the first thing we're going to look at is the collections. There are some collections. This is ones that you can do for, no material cost really. It's just a matter of you just going through and completing the collections. So if you look at collections and then you look at your specialization collections, all of the ones associated with the specializations from Path of Fire will give you Ascended weapons. So if you go through and complete these, this is kind of a freebie way, so to speak, of getting some additional Ascended weapons without really having to craft them. And then there's obviously the route you can go through. You can craft some Ascended weapons based on what you need. So if you need like a great sword, go ahead and grab that through weaponsmithing. And you're able to go through and then craft these. So there's some crafting guides out there. I'm really not going to get into those because a lot of people have put a lot of time into making some really good guides out there. I don't think that's something that I really need to rehash myself. I will do it if you guys want to leave some comments or something. I can talk about kind of the current state of it now here in 2020, but I think right now most of the resources that are out there are still fairly adequately up to date for the most part. Definitely do a little bit of research on which ones are cheaper to buy on the TP versus cheaper to just craft up. So with that being said, that's kind of how I would handle the weapons for now. And then obviously you're able to, as your currency frees up, if you don't really want to spend the time going through and crafting them this way, you could, I guess, always go through and use your tickets later. But definitely for the first set on a character, you're definitely going to want to make sure you're putting all of your resources into your armor for World versus World on the Ascended track, and then after that things will kind of free up a little bit more, and you can kind of make a decision on whether you want to play more characters, whether you want to push towards legendary gear, which is going to give you the utility to just stat swap on the fly and just try and use different builds without necessarily having to go to the Mystic Forge and reroll your gear. So with all of that being said, I think that kind of covers the Ascended journey that you're going to need to the Ascended journey that you're going to be going on to get your character completely geared out in Ascended gear for World versus World. Good luck, happy huntings, and if you have any questions, as always, go ahead, leave them in the comments below, and I will be happy to answer them. Hopefully everyone has a great day, and stay safe. We'll catch you next time.